Avatar is more than the story of a distant world. It is a rediscovery of our own. James Cameron's 2009 epic remains a rare fusion of technological innovation and emotional storytelling, a film that feels as old as myth and as new as tomorrow. Watching it in 4K, one sees not just as a science fiction adventure, but a spiritual journey, one where the border between man and nature, machine and soul, begins to blur until we no longer know where humanity ends and the world begins. The film opens in a future that looks familiar in its decay, where Earth is dying, stripped of resources, and its people have learned to exploit everything but themselves. When paraplegic Marine Jake Sully is sent to Pandora to replace his deceased twin in the Avatar program, he steps into a world that is not his own, yet he feels like a memory of what humankind has lost, such as harmony, reverence, and awe. Now, Jake, played by Quiet Conviction by Sam Worthington, is a man torn between duty and rebirth. His journey is not one of heroism but awakening. The more he walks among the Na'vi, the native inhabitants of Pandora, the more he realizes that his mission to infiltrate and report for the human military industrial complex is actually a betrayal of everything sacred. The film frames his evolution with precision. Each step he takes in his borrowed body is a step further from the world that actually made him. Neytiri, portrayed by Zoe Saldana, is one of the most emotionally rich motion capture performances ever filmed. Becomes not just his guide but also his teacher. Through her, Jake learns that connection is not dominance, it is participation in the rhythm of life. Their love story anchors the film's spectacle in something really real, a yearning to belong to a world that does not seek to own but to understand. Cameron constructs this Pandora as a living organism, not just as a backdrop. Now, in the 4K Ultra HD, the details is breathtaking. The bioluminescent forests pulse with color, the floating mountains shimmer against skies drenched in light, and every leaf, every tendril seems to move with purpose. The HDR grading makes the world glow from within, the blues and greens saturating every frame with vitality. The film soundscape, enhanced by Dolby Atmos, is really immersive. Bird songs, whispers of wind, and the hum of unseen creatures weave together into a kind of symphony. Cameron's world building is not just escapism, it is restoration. He gives us a glimpse of the sacredness modern life has actually forgotten. The heart of Avatar lies in its moral confrontation. In fact, the collision between a civilization that extracts and one that really preserves. The corporate and military machinery led by Colonel Quadrich and Parker Selfridge embody the same arrogance that has scarred the earth, a belief that the world exists to be conquered. They actually do not see Na'vi as people but as obstacles. In fact, they see their home tree as a resource. Now, the destruction of Home Tree is one of the most devastating sequences in modern cinema, not simply because of its scale, but because it feels like a reenactment of every tragedy in human history, from colonization to environmental collapse. Yet Cameron never moralizes it. He lets the image indict us. The film mythologies center on Eva, the living network that binds all life, which transcends religion. It speaks to an ecological truth that all living things share a consciousness deeper than language or thought. When Neytiri tells Jake, all energy is only borrowed and one day you have to give it back. Now that line feels less like a dialogue and more like an ancient truth rediscovered. Through this, Cameron transforms science fiction into a sacred narrative. The battle scenes that follow are thrilling, yes, but they are not just spectacle, but they are ritual. The Na'vi do not fight for victory, in fact they fight for balance. In his final act, when Jake chooses to permanently join his avatar body, it is both a personal and symbolic rebirth. He is no longer a soldier or a spy. He is a bridge, proof that belonging is not just determined by origin but by connection. Cameron closes the film not with a triumphant declaration but with a quiet act of surrender, where Jack's opening his eyes in his new form, breathing for the first time not as a conqueror but as part of the living world. Now that moment, simple and wordless, remains one of the cinema's most powerful conclusions. The film's legacy extends beyond its box office success. over 2.9 billion worldwide to its influence on the cultural imagination. Critics at release were actually divided. Some saw it as a visually revolutionary but narratively a bit more familiar, echoing the Dances with the Wolves and Poncho Hunters. Yet, what those critics missed was the purpose of its simplicity. Avatar was designed as myth, not as metaphor. Myths are meant to be universal, easily understood, and deeply felt. Over time, audiences have come to recognize that its narrative familiarity is its actual strength. It allows its message to resonate across languages and generations. On 4K Blu-ray, Avatar achieves new life. The restoration captures the vibrancy and depth of Pandora in unprecedented detail. The HDR enhances the luminescence of Ewa's forest, the deep shadows of the night hunts, and the surreal beauty of the floating mountains. The Dolby Atmos mix pulls you into the world completely, from the smallest rustle of foliage to the thunder of Thanatos' attack. Packaging itself, featuring Jake and Ichiri beneath the bioluminescence canopy, evokes the same duality at the heart of the film. Humanity and nature is actually intertwined, inseparable. Bonus features include documentaries on the film's groundbreaking performance capture technology and Cameron's ecological inspiration, reminding us that Avatar was as much as a statement of belief as it was about achievement of craft. More than a decade later, Avatar feels even more relevant. Its warning about exploitation, displacement, and disconnection have become our headlines. But beneath its environmental and political commentary, it is ultimately a story about return, the return to empathy, the reverence to belonging. Cameron crafted not just a world to escape into, but also one to remember. Watching it again in 4K, we realized that the miracle of Pandora was never its creatures or technology. In fact, it was its truth. We are the aliens here, and our salvation, like Jack's, begins only when we decide to see the world as alive. In conclusion, Avatar endures not because it dazzles, but because it humbles. In its sweeping scale of intimate emotion, it reminds us that connection, not conquest, is the only path to survival. When credits fade and the sound of Pandora's forest lingers like an echo in the dark, we understand why Cameron called it Avatar. It is not just the story of a hero becoming something else. In fact, it is the story of humanity remembering what it once was. Now, this movie is a must-watch.